Good evening, everybody. Hi Anita. I haven't seen you in ages, it feels like. Let me just turn the music down. I'll actually turn it off. Off with your head. There we go. Good evening, everybody. Anita, how are you doing? I hope you're okay. As I said, I feel like I haven't seen you in an awful long time. Well, I've got a blanket with me this evening because it's rather chilly outside today, and it's rather chilly as a result in my living room as well for some strange reason. So I've got a long shirt on, and I've even got a blanket with me so that if I get a little bit chilly later, I can warm myself up. So I hope you are all very, very well. It's lovely to see you. I hope you're having a great week. My name is Joanna Godwin Seidl. For those of you who don't know, I am the director and producer of Vienna Theatre Project. And during the lockdown, we decided to read 1001 Arabian Nights, and I am doing so with my colleague, Saman Gerard. So she will be on tomorrow evening. Tonight, you have the pleasure of me. I am going to be starting with the 76th night of 1001 Arabian Nights, and we are, by the way, determined to read this. We are determined to read this. Hello, Sasha. We are determined to read this to the very end. We thought it was going to take us 4.5 years, but some of the chapters we've discovered are very, very short. So rather than do just like 5 minutes of reading a night, we are reading at least in half an hour. So we're getting through more than one night on some nights. So enjoy. I hope you're sitting comfortably, children. Back. I hope you're sitting comfortably, children. And if so, then let us begin 1001 Arabian Nights. Now, when it was the 76th night, Shahrazad said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the stoker girthed his ass for flight and bespake himself, saying, 'Oh, would I knew what is become of him!' ere he had done speaking, the castrato was standing by his head, and his side muscles quivered for fear, and he lifted up his voice and cried, 'Verily, he knoweth not the value of good offices as I have done him. I believe he hath denounced me to the eunuch, hence these pages get about me, and he hath made me an accomplice in his crime.' Then the effeminated one cried at him, saying, 'Who was it recited the verses? O liar, what didst thou say? I never repeated these couplets, nor did I know who repeated them, when it was thy companion. But now I will not leave thee between this place and Baghdad, but what betideth thy comrade shall betide thee.' Quoth the fireman, 'What I feared hath befallen me.' And he repeated this couplet: 'Twas as I feared, the coming ills discerning, but unto Allah we all are returning.' Then the eunuch cried upon the pages, saying, 'Take him off the ass.' So they carried him along with the caravan, surrounded by the pages, as the white contains the black of the eye. And the castrato said to them, 'If a hair of him be lost, you will be lost with it.' And he bade them privily treat him with honour and not humiliate him. But when the stoker saw himself beset by the pages, he despaired of his life, and returning to the eunuch said to him, 'O chief, I am neither this youth's brother, nor am I akin to him, nor is he sib to me, but I was a fireman in a hammam, and found him cast out in his sickness on the dung heap.' Then the caravan fared on, and the stoker wept, and imagined in himself 1,000 things, whilst the eunuch walked by his side, and told him nothing, but said to him, 'Thou disturbest our mistress by reciting verses, thou and this youth, but fear nothing for thyself, and kept laughing at him the while to himself. Whenever the caravan halted, they served him with food, and he and the castrato ate from one dish. Then the eunuch bade his labs bring a gugglet of sugared sherbet, and after drinking himself gave it to the fireman, who drank. But all the while his tears never dried out of fear for his life and grief for his separation from Zau al-Makan, for what had befallen them in their strangerhood. So they both travelled on with the caravan, whilst the chamberlain now rode by the door of his wife's litter, in attendance on Zau al-Makan and his sister, and now gave an eye to the fireman, and Nuzhat al-Zaman and her brother occupied themselves with converse and mutual condolence. And they ceased not after this fashion till they came within 3 days' journey from Baghdad. Here they alighted at eventide, and rested till the morning morrowed, and as they awoke they were about to load the beasts. Behold, there appeared afar off a great cloud of dust that darkened the firmament till it became black as gloomiest night. Thereupon the chamberlain cried out to them, "Stay, and your loading delay." Then mounting with his Mamelukes, rode forward in the direction of the dust cloud. When they drew near, suddenly appeared under it a numerous conquering host, like the full tide sea, with flags and standards, drums and kettle drums, horsemen and footmen. The chamberlain marvelled at this, and when the troops saw him, there detached itself from amongst them a plump 500 cavaliers, who fell upon him and his suite, and surrounded them 5 for 1. Whereupon said he to them, "What is the matter, and what are these troops that ye do this with us?" Asked they, "Who art thou, and whence comest thou, and whither art thou bound?" And he answered, "I am the chamberlain of the Emir of Damascus, King Sharkan, son of Omar bin al-Nu'man, lord of Baghdad and of the land of Khorasan, and I bring tribute and presents from him to his father in Baghdad." When the horsemen heard his words, they let their handkerchiefs fall over their faces and wept, saying, "In very sooth, King Omar is dead, and he died not but of poison. So fare ye forwards, no harm shall befall ye till you join his Grand Wazir Dandan." Now, when the chamberlain heard this, he wept sore and exclaimed, "Oh, for our disappointment in this our journey!" Then he and all his suite wept till they had come up with the host and sought access to the Wazir Dandan, who granted an interview and called a halt, and, causing his pavilion to be pitched, sat down on a couch therein and commanded to admit the chamberlain. Then he bade him be seated and questioned him, and he replied that he was chamberlain to the Emir of Damascus and was bound to King Omar with presents and the tribute of Syria. The Wazir, hearing the mention of King Omar's name, wept and said, "King Omar is dead by poison, and upon his dying the folk fell out amongst themselves as to who should succeed him, until they were like to slay one another on this account. But the notables and grandees and the 4 Qazi interposed, and all the people agreed to refer the matter to the decision of the 4 judges, and that none should gainsay them. So it was agreed that we go to Damascus and fetch thence the king's son Sharkan, and make him sultan over his father's realm." And amongst them there were some who would have chosen the cadet, Zau al-Makan, for, quoth they, his name be Light of the place. And he hath a sister, Nuzhat al-Zaman hight, the delight of the time. Out they set 5 years ago for Al-Hijaz, and none wotteth what is become of them. When the chamberlain heard this, he knew that his wife had told him the truth of her adventures, and he grieved with sore grief for the death of King Omar, albeit he joyed with exceeding joy, especially at the arrival of Zau al-Makan, for that he would now become Sultan of Baghdad in his father's stead. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased saying her permitted say. Now I'm going to take a sip of tea, everybody, and then I will continue with the 77th night. Now, when it was the 77th night, Shahrazad said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when Shah Khan's chamberlain heard of the death of King Omar bin al-Nu'man, he mourned, but he rejoiced of his wife and her brother Zau al-Makan, who would become Sultan of Baghdad in his father's stead. So he turned to the Wazir Dandan and said to him, "Verily, your tale is a wonder of wonders. Know, O chief Wazir, that here, where you have accounted me, Allah hath given you rest from fatigue and bringeth you your desire after the easiest of fashions. For that his almighty will restoreth to you Zau al-Makan and his sister Nuzhat al-Zaman, whereby we will settle the matter as easily as we can." When the minister heard these words, he rejoiced with great joy and said, "O chamberlain, tell me the tale of the twain, and what befell them, and the cause of their long absence." So he repeated to him the whole story, and told him that Nuzhat al-Zaman was his wife, and related to him the adventures of Zau al-Makan from first to last. As he had ended his tale, the wazir sent for the emirs and wazirs and chief officers, and acquainted them with the matter, whereat they rejoiced with great joy and wondered at the happy chance. Then they gathered in a body and went into the chamberlain and did their service to him, kissing the ground between his hands. And the Wazir Dandan also rose and went out to meet him and stood before him in honour. After this, the chamberlain held on to that day a divan council, and he and the Wazir sat upon a throne, whilst all the emirs and grandees and officers of state took their places before them according to their several ranks. Then they melted sugar in rose water and drank, after which the emirs sat down to hold council and permitted the rest of the host to mount and ride forward leisurely, till they should make an end of their debate and overtake them. So the officers kissed the ground between their hands, and mounting rode onwards, preceded by the standards of war. When the grandees had finished their conference, they took horse and rejoined the host, and the chamberlain approached the Wazir Dandan and said, "I deem it well to ride on before you, and precede you, that I may get ready a place for the Sultan and notify him of your coming and of your choosing him as Sultan over the head of his brother Shah Khan." "Aright thou reckest," answered the wazir. Then the chamberlain rose up in haste, and Dandan also stood up to honour him, and brought him presents, which he conjured him to accept. In similar guise did all the emirs and grandees and officers of state, bringing him gifts and calling down blessings on him, and saying to him, "Haply thou wilt mention our case to Sultan Zau al-Makan, and speak to him to continue us in our dignities." The chamberlain promised all they required, and bade his pages be ready to march, whereupon the wazir Dandan sent with him tents, and bade the tent pitchers set them up on a day's journey from the city. And they did his bidding. Then the chamberlain mounted and rose forward full of joy, and saying to himself, "How blessed is this journey!" And indeed his wife was exalted in his eyes, she and her brother Zau al-Makan. They made all haste over their wayfare, till they reached a place distant a day's journey from Baghdad, where the chamberlain called a halt for rest, and bade his men alight and make ready for a sitting place for the Sultan Zau al-Makan, son of King Omar bin al-Nu'man, while he rode forward with his Mamelukes and, alighting at a distance from Nuzhat al-Zaman's litter, commanded the eunuchs to ask leave of admission to the presence. They did so, and she gave permission. Whereupon he went into her and conversed with her and her brother, and told them of the death of their father, and Zau al-Makan, how the heads of the people had made him king over them instead of his sire, and he gave them joy of the kingdom. They both wept for their father, and asked the manner of his being killed. But the chamberlain answered, "The news rests with the wazir Dandan, who will be here tomorrow leading all the host, and it only remaineth for thee, O king, to do what thy counsel, since they have unanimously chosen thee sultan. For if thou do not do this, they will choose someone else, and thou canst not be sure of thy life with another sultan. Haply he will kill thee, or discord may befall between you twain, and the kingdom pass out of the hands of both." Zau al-Makan bowed his head a while, and then said, "I accept this position." For indeed there was no refusing, and he was satisfied that the chamberlain had counselled him well and wisely, and set him on the right way. Then he added, "O my uncle, how shall I do with my brother Shah Khan?" "O my son," replied the chamberlain, "thy brother will be Sultan of Damascus, and thou Sultan of Baghdad. So take heart of grace and get ready thy case." Zau al-Makan accepted this, and the chamberlain presented him with a suit of royal raiment and a dagger of state, which the wazir Dandan had brought with him. Then, leaving him, he bade the tent pitchers choose a spot of rising ground and set up thereon a spacious pavilion, wherein the sultan might sit to receive the emirs and grandees. Moreover, he ordered the kitcheners to cook rich viands and serve them, and he commanded the water carriers to dispose the water troughs. They did as he bade them, and presently arose a cloud of dust from the ground and spread till it walled the horizon round. After a while, the dust dispersed, and there appeared under it the army of Baghdad and Khorasan, a conquering host like the full-tide sea. And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. So, what time have we got, folks? Okay, I think I can read one more night. So that noise in the background, I don't know if you can hear it, by the way, is my dog scratching himself in all sorts of unpleasant places. So I do apologise for the extra sounds, but he's disappeared off now. He doesn't want his moment of fame this evening to come and say hello to you all. I shall have another sip of tea, and then we shall get going again. Hi, Jochen. Hi, Tristan. Now, when it was the 78th night, Scheherazade said, "It hath reached me, O auspicious king, that when the chamberlain bade the tench pitchers set up a pavilion spacious enough to receive the subjects flocking to their sultan, they planted a splendid shamiana befitting kings. And as they ended their labours, behold, a dust cloud aspired aloft, and the breeze made it lift, and beneath it showed a conquering host. And presently it appeared that this was the army of Baghdad and Khorasan, preceded by the wazir Dan, and in it all rejoiced at the accession of the light of the place. Now Zau al-Makan had donned robes of royal estate, and girt himself with a sword of state. So the chamberlain brought him a steed, and he mounted, surrounded by the Mamelukes, and all the company from the tents on foot, to do him service. And he rode on until he came to the great pavilion, where he sat down, and he laid the royal dagger across his thighs, whilst the chamberlain stood in attendance on him, and his armed slaves stationed themselves under the entrance awning of the Shahminiana, with drawn swords in their hands. Presently up came the troops and the host, and craved admission. So the chamberlain went into Zau al-Makan and asked his leave, whereupon he bade admit them 10 by 10. The chamberlain acquainted them with the king's command, to which they replied, "We hear and we obey." And all drew up before the pavilion entrance. Then he took 10 of them and carried them through the vestibule until the presence of Sultan Zau al-Makan, whom, when they saw, they were awed. But he received them with the most gracious kindness and promised them all good. So they gave him joy of the safe return and invoked Allah's blessings upon him, after which they took the oath of fealty never to gainsay him in aught, and they kissed ground before him and withdrew. Then other 10 entered, and he entreated them as he entreated the others, and they ceased not to enter 10 by 10, till none was left, and the wazir Dan. Lastly, the minister went in and kissed the ground before Zau al-Makan, who rose to meet him, saying, "Welcome, O wazir, and sire's sans peer. Verily thine acts are those of a counsellor right dear, and judgment and foreseeing clear are in the hands of the subtle of Lear." Then bade he the chamberlain forthwith go out and cause the tablets to be spread, and order all the troops thereto. So they came and ate and drank. Moreover, the Sultan commanded his wazir Dan call a 10 days' halt of the army, that he might be private with them and learn from him how and wherefore his father had been slain. The wazirs obeyed the commands of the Sultan with submission and wished him eternity of glory, and said, "This needs must be." He then repaired to the heart of the encampment and ordered the host to halt 10 days. They did as he bade them, and moreover he gave them leave to divert themselves, and ordered that none of the lords in waiting should attend upon the king for service during the space of 3 days. Then the wazir went to the sultan and reported all to him, and Zau al-Makan waited until nightfall, when he went into his sister's Nuzhat al-Zaman and asked her, "Dost thou know the cause of my father's murder or not?" "I have no knowledge of the cause," she answered, and drew a silken curtain before herself, whilst Zau al-Makan seated himself without the curtain and commanded the wazir to presence, and, when he came, said to him, "I desire thou relate to me in detail the cause of the killing of my sire, King bin al-Nu'man." "Know then, O king," replied Dandan, "that King Omar bin al-Nu'man, when he returned to Baghdad from his chasing and hunting, entered the city, inquired for thee and thy sister, but could not find you, and knew that you twain had gone on the pilgrimage. Whereat he was greatly grieved and much angered, and his breast was straitened, and he abode thus 1/2 a year, seeking news of you from all who came and went. But none could give him any tidings. Now, while we were in attendance upon him one day, after a whole year had sped since you were lost to his sight, lo, there came to us an ancient dame with signs of being a devotee, accompanied by 5 damsels, high-bosomed virgins like moons, endowed with such beauty and loveliness as tongues faileth to describe. And to crown their perfections of comeliness, they could read the Quran and were versed in various kinds of learning and in the histories of bygone peoples. Then that old woman sought audience of the king, and he bade admit her, whereupon she entered the presence and kissed the ground before his hands. I was sitting then by his side, and he, seeing in her the signs of asceticism and devoutness, made her draw near and take seat hard by him. And when she had sat down, she addressed him and said, "Know, O king, that with me are 5 damsels, whose like no king among the kings possesseth, for they are endowed with wit and beauty and loveliness and perfection. They read the Quran and the traditions, and are skilled in all manner of learning and in the history of bygone races. They stand here between thy hands to do thee service, O king of the age, and it is by trial that folk are prized or despised." The father, who had found mercy, looked at the damsels, and their favour pleased him. So he said to them, "Let each and every of you make me hear something for what she knoweth anent the history of the folk of yore and of peoples long gone before." And Shahrazad perceived the dawn of day and ceased to say her permitted say. So, I bet this story is just about to get naughty and exciting. I actually don't know because I haven't read on. So it'll be an interesting discovery tomorrow through Saman, as to what happens next and what happens with these. Was it 5 beautiful virgins? They're always virgins, aren't they? Ladies and gentlemen, it is now, oh, look how perfect, 10:15. It is now, thank you very much for the hearts. Just what I needed tonight. Thanks a million, Joanna. Oh, you're more than welcome, Anita. It was such, I always say this and it's always true. It was such a pleasure reading for you this evening. And I look forward, I don't know whether I'm going to be back on Thursday or Friday. Samantha haven't discussed yet because it is actually my husband's birthday tomorrow. So I had to swap round readings because she was originally, anyway, doesn't matter. I'm not reading tomorrow. Samantha is, and she will have, you're welcome, Vienna Theatre Project. Wait, I'm Vienna Theatre Project. How come Vienna Theatre Project be talking back to me? It's Samantha, I know it is. You are welcome, and I look forward to hearing your reading tomorrow, dear Samantha. I'm sure it's going to be very, very lovely, and I wish you all a very, very pleasant evening. Many blessings. Have a beautiful day tomorrow, and many salams. Good night, everybody. Take care of yourself. Thanks so much for the hearts, everyone. Good night. Take care, and have a lovely, lovely evening and day tomorrow. Bye-bye. Salam alaikum.